Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Debbie Mann with Festivals and Events Ontario, and we have our guest, not our guest, my co-host, Marnie Lapierre, here. And thank you for joining us at Festivals Helping Festivals, our very first Festivals Helping Festivals. I'm excited about this. Hey, Jean, how are you? So we are going to, Marnie, do you want to bring up the agendas and some of the ground rules that we have so that we can get going?
Definitely. I was going to just share them in the chat.
Okay, good.
That way, anybody that's joining us as we progress, then that'll be available there to them.
If they join us, just so you know, if they join us late, they only get the chat from when they joined.
Oh, that's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm terrible at screen sharing. Let me see. Can I do that from here?
Sorry, guys. How are you doing? How's everybody doing? While you're doing that, why don't we all introduce ourselves then?
Yes. There.
Okay. Why don't we unmute and put your cameras on and join us? Connie, why don't you go?
I'm Connie Benito from the historic downtown Chatham BIA, and we run Retrofest, and thank God we're doing a live again this year.
John, why don't you go ahead? Introduce yourself. Nope, you're still muted, John. There you go.
Okay, my name is Jean Samoa. I'm a founder and artistic director of Milton African and Multicultural Festival.
Welcome. Great, here we go. So why don't we keep continuing? We're a little ahead of schedule here. So as Anya, why don't you go ahead?
Sure, I'm Anya Arvo. I'm the pre-sales manager for Red 61, which is a ticketing system. I'm based in Niagara Falls, but I've also worked at a lot of venues in Toronto. I worked at Roy Thompson Hall, the Royal Conservatory, and at the Thunder Bay Community Auditorium in my career.
Thanks, Anya. Welcome. Zelda. Zelda, you're muted.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mistake. Yeah, my name is Zelda. I work for a business called Adventuresome, but currently my main focus is going back to school at University of Waterloo, focusing on sustainable development and the 2040 agenda. Ooh la la.
Lovely. Thanks for joining us, Zelda.
Morning.
Ashlyn, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Ashlyn. I am the event program coordinator for the town of Oakville.
Welcome. Adrian.
Hi, good morning. I'm Adrian. I'm the event manager at Royal Botanical Gardens in Burlington.
Welcome, Adrian. Tina, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Tina Myers, and I'm with the Niagara Parks here in Niagara Falls.
Thank you. And Jennifer?
Good morning. My name's Jennifer Allaby, and I am the Executive Director of the Canadian Association of Exposition Management.
Welcome, Jennifer. Lori.
Hi, Lori Stevenson. I'm a volunteer with Sing the Vocal Arts Festival in Toronto, and I have a background in theater technical production, specializing in sound design, and I also worked as a film technician. I'm retired.
Thanks for joining us, Lori. Kyle?
Okay.
Hi, everybody. My name's Kyle. I'm the owner and founder of Insert. I'm a supplier with FEO, specializing in busker entertainment. I'm also an actor and work in film and television, and have a background with producing festivals as well.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kyle. Welcome. Brock.
Hi guys, I'm Brock Robinson with Municipality of Clarington in the Special Events Department. So running our own internal special events as well as supporting local events that are need permits through us.
Thanks, Brock. Welcome. Jennifer? Oh, Jennifer already introduced herself. Lisa, did I miss anybody? Colleen, did everybody go? Okay. All right. So why don't we introduce ourselves? Hi, I'm Debbie Mann. I'm with Festivals and Events Ontario, and welcome to our very first roundtable, Festivals Helping Festivals.
And I'm Marnie Lapierre, board member of Festivals and Events Ontario, also the owner and consultant for Northern Events and Tourism Consulting. I've worn many hats for events over the years, and really happy to be able to participate in this today. I really wish I had had access to something like this back in the day when I got involved. So tell one, tell all, and maybe we can grow this group a little bit more over the next few months.
Thanks, Marnie. And Jay, do you want to go?
Hi, Jay Nyhouse here, Festivals and Events Ontario. Going to be working in the background here as technical support.
Okay. And Linda is just joining us. All right, so Linda, we're okay. She's still connecting. We'll come back to her. Marnie, over to you.
Alrighty, so my role today will be to help guide through the conversation, but we're going to quickly go over the ground rules for our little meetup today. So we're asking, as much as possible, please keep your cameras on because it's so nice to engage and see faces to the voices. We're hoping someday we can all meet together again in person, but for now this has to do. So we'd love to see you. And please, until you're ready to share into the conversation, please keep the mics on mute. We're encouraging participation. It is a safe place where we can all discuss the topic at hand. Today's topic is venue and site management. Because there's many of us here participating, we don't want to talk over each other. We normally do that in person because we're so excited to share. But if you could use the hand icon to raise your hand to speak, and then to remember to put it down when you're all done. Chat is there for use. We're hoping to keep it to the topic at hand, and keeping it appropriate to the event here today. We're encouraging everyone to network with each other. Some of you know each other, some of you don't. This is a perfect opportunity because we have all been there and done that, and this is an amazing resource that we can all get to know one another and to get our events together. A little bit of camaraderie. This is going to be recorded. After the event, it will be accessible to the membership. If you have questions about topics that were discussed later on, if you're not a member, become a member. And if that's not possible, definitely reach out to one of us at FEO and we can go back to the recording to get the answer that you might have missed. And we want you to have fun. Festivals and events are supposed to be fun. We know all the work that goes on to present them, but here, this is also a platform where we're not only gathering information, we're also gathering community. And it should be an enjoyable process, and let's work towards that. I am asking, as Debbie is, could you please rename, if you haven't already, by putting your name and the event, festival, or company or municipality that you're representing, so that we know who we're talking to as we go through the day. And now I'm going to be handing it back over to Debbie for our land acknowledgement.
Thanks, Marnie. So just quickly, as we open Festivals Helping Festivals, we have Festivals and Events Ontario. We'd like to acknowledge the land we now call Ontario is on the traditional lands of many Indigenous peoples. specifically the Algonquin, Mississauga, Ojibwe, Cree, Adowa, Potawatomi, and the Haudenosaunee people. We are grateful for all the opportunities to meet, and we thank all the generations of people and stewards who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. So here we are, venue. I think you can stop sharing now. Thanks, Marnie. So venue, what is it you want to know? A couple of you have sent something to us, and but we want to open this up and ask you, what is it? We have a list, a very long list about venues, but what do you want to know? What do you want to share? What do you want to get out of this? Camera's on and okay. Oh, that's what you put on. Okay, thanks, Marnie. Okay, so because this is a round table, because we want your interaction, we had a couple of questions. Marnie, where do you want to start? We had addressing COVID public health and safety considerations as one of the things that we were talking about. Zelda, I'm not sure if you're talking to us. I see your lips moving, but I don't know if you wanted to. if you were meant to talk to us. So, okay. So Marnie, addressing COVID and public health and safety considerations. So we have hi Colleen, welcome. We have a huge, a list here of things to talk about and a couple of things that were brought to our attention. So where do you want to start?
I'm going to jump in because I have an event. I have a couple of events coming up this year, and they're coming up rather quickly. I'm president of the Timmins Multicultural Society. We're putting on the Timmins Multicultural Festival. It's in its 50th year. And we're experiencing such a change in site management because times are changing. I don't know if anyone else is experiencing this. If you've got a long-running event, at one time you used to be able to pick up the phone and call the municipality and say, okay, I need the arena on such and such a date. Fine, they take your name and number, and they send you an invoice, and you got them to put up tables. We're now changing in our own municipality to a one-stop shopping, customer service-oriented organization, so that we contact City Hall, we're mailed a package, and fill it in, send it out, and they distribute it to the appropriate departments, dependent on how your festival is running. Now add into that the COVID regulations that may or may not be taking place, depending throughout the year how things go. Keeping up with I'm sure it's different in every municipality, but the health units in those municipalities, how vigilant they may or may not be. What is the organization's responsibility? What is your venue's responsibility? What are people experiencing out there? Because I know for myself, it's been quiet for 2 years, and now I seem to be rolling downhill and things are coming up faster. What are you experiencing? Have you run into any successes? Love to hear successes or overcoming challenges that may have hit. That's kind of what I'd like to hear. Nobody wants to suffer alone, I guess. We'll start it that way. Anybody ready to share?
I guess I'll jump in, Marnie. From a municipality standpoint, we've hit the ground running here with a lot of the events that are run within our municipality that we are obviously getting approvals for, as you were talking about, getting the package and all that. We've kind of adjusted how we're doing that in terms of how we handle it as a municipality as well. I'm newer in this role, and as part of my role, it was to create that process for the events and festivals to apply to us. So we are seeing a lot of festivals come back, a lot of events come back that are changing how they do things because of COVID. We had a car rally that normally went on that changed to more of a convoy, for instance, and things like that. So we're adapting. We're working with them to get the proper approvals in events that may not have looked like they did now, prior to COVID as well. So really, we've been, again, as well, we're kind of rolling downhill with this, to use your term, and working with our partners here to try to best support them as well.
Thanks, Brock. Anybody else have anything to add? So, okay, Tina, hi, go ahead.
Hi, because Niagara Parks is obviously outdoors, we've had a little bit easier transition. So we did have a successful event with the Winter Festival of Lights on our property. It was easy to be able to accommodate that in a parkway. However, this summer we are working at having more of a larger gathering scenario. So we are watching whatever the province is sending out each milestone and kind of inputting it into what our plans are. So we have the summer games coming on and a few other events. But so far it seems to be, we're still in the planning stages. So everything seems to be moving forward.
Thanks, Tina.
That's nice to hear. I actually really enjoyed following along with the winter event because it made me so very hopeful for 2022. And I think it's important to take a look at how, the spin can happen and make that change to making the events accessible during these times, with all these considerations. And definitely. We have...
there's a couple of questions in here that we'll get to, but I was wondering, are any of you experiencing, because we haven't had any live events in a while, and we're moving into that, I'm just thinking of inventory, like as far as being able to hold your event on the weekend you want to hold it. Are you finding you're able to do that, or is there like a little bit of shuffling around, having to change your dates because the property you normally have is not available? I'm just curious on that. Yep, Connie, go ahead.
I know here in Chatham, the municipality allows first right of refusal. So if you've had an event year after year after year, you get that same year the next year if it's an annual event. This year, they actually accidentally overlapped dates and took my date and gave it to somebody else. So then that ended up causing some issues with the new group that they now have to move because that's my first right of refusal. I do know that every weekend in Chatham is in all the parks that allow events are booked for this year. That's how busy they are going to be this year.
Thanks. Anybody else? Linda says the only thing we're finding is that some services are booked up for weddings. Finding a DJ and our usual photographer was a challenge. Finding food trucks are nuts right now. It's just really interesting, I think. Colleen, go ahead.
I was just going to add that we're seeing similar things happening as well. We've got a lot of our regular major events coming back and actually coming to the table wanting to go ahead this year, which is really great. In Quinte West, the majority of our events happen outdoor, which is also a little bit of a bonus for us, just in terms of spacing and the regulations and stuff. We have moved one of our signature events, our Hops on the Water event, from an April date to an October date, just in hopes of being further away from the pandemic at that time, because we'd be having it this month otherwise. And even though it's an outdoor event with numbers rising, and there's still such a mix of feelings about that we were hoping to sort of avoid some of that by pushing that date out. But our Canada Day is going ahead at our outdoor Centennial Park, and several of the other major events that come to Quinte West, like the Rib Fest and stuff, are going ahead. We have seen some of our smaller events fall away, though, and haven't come back to us for 2022. So that's been interesting. We'll see how that sort of plays out. But there's a lot more sort of vendor and artisan market and pop-up style events starting to happen in Quinte West too. So filling in a lot of the gaps.
Now, are the pop-ups, are they like one day or just a few hours, or how is that looking?
Our pop-ups, we actually invested in a few sheds. And so last year we were able to run them from June until September. Because they sort of are outdoor too, that gave us a little bit of leeway to have rotating vendors in the sheds. And at Christmas time, we did our outdoor holiday market. We included some programming around the outdoor market as well, just some music and Santa and things like that. And now we're building on to the pop-ups this summer. They're going to run again. They've been expanded from 3 sheds to 6. And then there'll be some other rotating vendors there and food trucks too. So we're seeing a real sort of trend towards that way right now. I don't know how long that'll continue, but.
Wonderful. Thanks. Any comments, any input? Kyle.
Just to follow on Linda's comments. So, I mean, as a supplier, I typically try to do the same thing as what municipalities were doing. Like any event that we have that repeats, we try to give right of first refusal. But we have found a number of events have shifted dates for various reasons, whether they can't get venues or, it's been 2 years. So typically for a supplier, we try to build a season and love going to repeat events and build the season that way. But this year is, it's looking a little bit different. It's creating some challenges too, because we want to be everywhere that we can and be back with the events that we like being with.
That's interesting, Kyle. Thanks. And are you finding, so how is it different though for you? That's what how is it, you want to be able to do your events that you want, but is it different in as much as different people are looking for your services, or you just aren't willing to travel to Thunder Bay?
Oh no, we're willing to go anywhere. That's
okay.
No, it's
okay.
It's just a little bit different. Like some events that we normally do every year, some of them still aren't happening. Some have shifted from 3 days to 1 day, just because they've been pushed back. And I mean, as event planners, how long it takes to plan an event. So the fact that you were held back so long in knowing whether or not you could hold something, some people are going towards like a 1 day. So, where our ideal is to have our season booked out and be all 3 days, at 3 or 4 days at a specific event. It's a little bit more like 1 day here, 4 days here. It's a little bit more of a challenge in kind of making that patchwork work together into a full season.
Got it.
I think too, some events are also waiting for the wonderful support from the government that everybody rushed to apply for earlier this year. And we're just waiting to see because that is a make or break for some festivals. If that doesn't come through, that's even more that kind of fall off the board, right? And that definitely affects our suppliers and entertainment that comes along with the festival.
Yeah, we did have a few who were just waiting on grant funding, and some of them didn't get it, and I was absolutely surprised that they didn't.
Yeah, definitely.
Elda.
So here in London, Rock the Park is pivoted. They've expanded to during the week because of space needs and whatnot. So they're having a concert midweek, which typically wouldn't happen. And the city's been pretty agreeable to help make sure that unfolds. So they're having concerts Wednesday. There's major, coming September, everything's kind of getting pushed back in September. So there's culture days and all those kind of things. And so they're pivoting and doing a lot more outdoor stuff and more pop-up stuff and starting to reach outside the city and using other venues. So there's like the Red Barn Brewery that just opened kind of locally. So they're starting to push outside of the city to utilize maybe unique spaces that wouldn't otherwise have been tapped into. So it's kind of bittersweet, but they're just upwards and onwards, upwards and onwards.
Okay, interesting. Thanks, Zelda. Tina.
What we're finding on kind of the supply end of things is just manufacturing light displays. Our suppliers have contacted us and said we need to know even sooner. We're not getting in the supplies. So a lot of it has been just assets that we might need moving forward that are not available to actually bring in.
Okay. Any feedback, comment on that? Okay, Marnie, I'm thinking we got something from Adrian on email. I sent everybody a request what you'd like to ask. And so I think I'll read this out if that's okay and get feedback from everybody. Looking forward to the session tomorrow. In regards to the venue at Royal Botanical Gardens, we have the luxury of utilizing indoor and outdoor spaces. We obviously activate our outdoor properties in the spring and summer, and to do so, we use a lot of 10 by 10 tents. They can damage fairly easily, both from storms and in transit between garden areas. We like using them because they are quick and easy to set up and take down, lightweight enough that 1 or 2 people can carry them, but we seem to go through tent frames fairly quickly. We do have larger tents at like 15 by 15s and 20s by 20, but they require the assistance of our union staff, and usually once set up are there for a period of time. I'm wondering if there are other solutions to providing pop-up shelters for staff and volunteers at outdoor events that are more cost-effective and sustainable. Anybody have any feedback on that?
I'll throw in a little bit from some of the things that we've done up here in the north is that we've had a couple of 8-day festivals. Definitely, if you ever get involved with one, get a lot of rest. But we needed a hospitality site for volunteers and for staff to provide them shelter and respite from the chaotic days that they were donating and committing their time to. So we worked with a company that supplied the construction style trailers, the ones that you would see along a road construction site, and we had them grouped together. They even formed up as green rooms for artists that were on stage. And in return for that, we allowed them all kinds of sponsorship signage all over the site, and of course mentioned as usual, with the understanding that we would care for them in great detail during these events. And the smaller events saw this and were also able to do that. Now, during high construction season, that can be a bit of a difficulty, but with funding applications, it can be put into it depending where you go or how your sales do over the course of your thing. That was something that really worked well with the municipality, ending up buying a few of them that were used at other events that the municipality was leading. So, they were multi-purpose. They weren't the most prettiest things, but you could supply electricity and lights and heat to them. That was a really nice aspect on the colder days in the middle of summer in Northern Ontario, if you've ever been up here. But that was one suggestion. And I mean, you could always make them look nicer. Just something that we did here to accommodate that particular need over those time periods.
I remember, just to add to that, I remember one year at our conference, I don't even remember where it was, we had a supplier, Scott Greenwood, who had inflatable tents. And all you needed was a generator and to blow it up and keep it up and they were very cool sizes. And he also had, instead of like barrier walls and stuff like that. So I thought that was really interesting. And, but again, and easy to transport as well. They weren't difficult. Well, they were heavy, but they weren't like long and bulky like tents are. They were in a self-contained carryable case. So that's what I remember. Ashlyn?
Yeah, I was only going to say, I think that that's a really good idea if you're on private property, but I know a lot of municipalities, and I know for ours for sure, we don't allow inflatable items on any of our property, and we don't allow generators. So yeah,
it would
that
be
might
noisy.
yeah. Well, there is a few generators that we allow, but they're the absolutely silent ones, and they're not ones that are continuously running. So you wouldn't be able to use them if you were utilizing municipal property.
Right.
So I know, but if you're on private ones, they're really common.
We have a couple of other questions here. Let's go to the top of the page on the chat. Ashlyn, you said how to incorporate historical venues into your programming despite not being compliant in areas like AOTA and OHS.
Yeah, so for that one, I was just wondering, so obviously we're a municipality and we kind of have we don't have the same things as vendors would have. We operate on all our own property, so we don't have to ask anyone or rent or do any of that through third parties. But we own a lot of historical properties that obviously we would like to showcase and utilize because they're a big part of our cultural and heritage planning. But the only issue is we obviously have a commitment to having all of our events fully accessible to all visitors and so forth. So I find it difficult to showcase our beautiful historical venues without like incorporating them into our programming for the town, despite all the regulations there are for things like AOTA, because historical buildings can't be altered. So like there wouldn't be wheelchair accessible and things like that. So I was wondering if anyone had any success to making an open for public event using historical venues.
We actually have just put together, oh, sorry, I should have put my hand up.
It's okay, Dina.
We just put together a committee and we have a consultant in to go over those very questions because we have a lot of historical property buildings on our property. And so we're trying to figure that out now. So I don't have anything to add, just to say that we're working on the same stuff.
Are a lot of oh, sorry, Ashlyn, you're muted.
I'm on mute. I was going to say, I'll throw my email in the chat. And if you want to throw me any thing that you get from that, I'd happily take it because it's just difficult because obviously everybody wants to use these beautiful buildings, but if it's a town event, you need everybody to be able to access it, right? So I'd love any ways that I can better incorporate historical buildings for sure.
Okay, and let me know too if you'd be willing, if you want me to share your information to this group. I can make sure that everybody gets the email addresses of the people that are here. Anything else from there? Linda says, I'm finding that municipalities don't want to approve the venue until a few weeks before the festival, just in case there's a lockdown, so can't finalize until the few weeks right up to the date. Also, venues now want us to pay for police on site in case there are freedom protests. How are you handling like those future issues that we've been seeing happening here? Like, or is anybody, like, what are you doing for planning? Yeah, that's an interesting comment because, my thing, to be honest, was a concern just about mental health at the events after being shut down for 2 years. How is everybody going to be, and have you planned for that? So this is another element of that. Any comments or discussion to be had around that? Kyle.
Oh, sorry. I think someone else was going to go too.
No, go ahead.
I don't necessarily have a solution, but I mean, for a number of years, as someone who volunteered and attended Pride parades and Pride festivals, you would often get different groups who might protest outside or try to make a presence, or in some cases, unfortunately, try to make an intimidation. Not saying that's what this would be, but unfortunately, some of the times is to just have resiliency and, while people are there, make sure that things stay safe, and having great hosts available. Like at the time, there was actually a drag queen on the stage who noted that it was a group that wasn't necessarily saying the nicest things. But they were just reiterating, it's just like not to retaliate, not to antagonize, but just keep doing what you're doing. Keep spreading the love. And eventually they'll go away.
But what if they're there? Well, they were there at the Pride, but Pride was a parade, right? So you walked.
So at the time, I was actually attending London Pride, and typically they have a street fair where they usually have fences between the street and the sidewalks to keep the sidewalks free. And it was a white supremacist group who was walking up and down the sidewalks, protesting outside and shouting hate slogans. So just to give a clear picture. So at the time, the response was to, they're there to make their presence known, but basically not to retaliate, not to antagonize. It was clear why they were there, but they would go away. And yes, London Pride does also have. Oh, okay, thank you, Linda. Yeah, they do have a parade as well. This was at the street fair component, and it probably was led by a pastor from the church.
Wow. Okay. Tina?
We have noticed a lot more negative or aggressive kind of behavior and have put into place extra precautions for our frontline staff at our different attractions, and we'll be implementing that same kind of policy and procedure and for our volunteers. So we usually get together and do a risk management orientation prior to all of our events, and we are adding a huge component on that to the customer service and how to deal with a lot of the different situations that are out there. People are divided in so many ways, whether it be masks, no masks, vaccine, all these things. So even though the government has dropped many things, there are people that still want to protect themselves. I know right now I'm working from home because my middle one has COVID. So it's, and we've been through this like a couple times now, and it's just, and we've done all the things we're supposed to do in quarantine. It's just, it's in the schools right now. So I tell my other kids, you guys got to wear a mask. Everybody's wearing a mask right now. So we're trying to prepare everyone on our front lines to be more patient, what to do in case of abuse from a patron or a visitor. So I know that that's going to be a big one.
Thanks, Tina. Yeah. What about municipalities not approving the venue until weeks before? How do you plan around that? Are other municipalities doing this?
I know that. Sorry, I was just going to say that would be tough because I know that we do have processes and committees that has to go up the levels and everything. A lot of the things we're doing are just with contingencies. As it stands, this is approved. We are still requiring a COVID plan, just to know that they have something in place if things start to tighten, what the event, how that might change the event. I hope we're not waiting, until just a few weeks before the event, but I'm thinking we're getting better with that, but I'm sure that can be really frustrating. but again, we're going ahead with our events, and we're just putting in little contingencies in any contracts or anything that we're putting out there, even with suppliers and whatnot. Everything's got a COVID clause now.
Yeah, I like for organizers, we have, we don't approve anything until 45 days ahead of time. Just because, well, for a bunch of reasons for COVID. And we also do require you to, depending on if it's a walk or anything like that, or like if you're planning on using the roads or sidewalks or anything like that, or if it's a substantial event, so kind of big, we do require you to consult with police, and whatever the police say, if they recommend that you need a paid duty police officer, then we just stand by whatever the police say. So there might be more often now that you have to consult with the police, where that might not have been a process always when you were with municipalities. And yeah, you probably for events would require police more often than previously. And the 45 days has to do with COVID, and the type of properties that we own are the ones that get the most frequent requests for use are waterfront properties, which so depending on water levels and things like that, and the property condition based on the weather, that's another reason why we do 45-day holds as well.
I think the other thing for us from a municipal standpoint is just constant communication with the event host. Sorry if I'm cutting out. It says my internet's a little bit wonky here. So, but yeah, it's just constant communication with the host and where we're at as a municipality, what we need from them, and so on and so forth. And because that's also changing with how the events are changing as well. There's new considerations that have to come in for some of our departments to approve because the event changed how it's doing it. You know, some events we've had that have been in past been the same cookie cutter event for years now has changed a certain element. So now that takes more planning from our department or more considerations. And so it's just constant communication between us and the event host. So.
Okay. I'm just going to peek up here, see if we've got some more things. I know there's been some discussion in the chat regarding volunteer recruitment. Volunteers is definitely one of the topics we'll be discussing later on this year. But it does, actually, I want to kind of pull that into the venue discussion, because in our community, now that they've changed over the format of how you book a venue, your entire almost business model for the event is going to be supplied with your application to use the space. And they have requested a itemized list of who your event workers are. Whereas in the past, you know, your volunteers were those people in the brightly colored shirts. In our case, it's yellow up here in Timmins. We never had to supply names or contacts. And I reached out back to the municipality saying, can I ask the particular reasoning for this? And they said, well, contact tracing for COVID. And I thought that was really interesting, because it seemed to be, in my opinion, something more that the organizer would be responsible for taking care of, saying, okay, in our group of volunteers, somebody has tested post-event positive, like very close post-event. And, you know, and then I would let that group know and perhaps put out maybe a notification in the news. But now the municipality wants to collect that information. And their reason being for that is because the city workers that are there supporting the event in whatever format. So it's definitely, I'm kind of seeing across the board here a big change in the way that we're dealing with venues. I know we've been very sent heavily towards the municipal side of things. Maybe we could branch the discussion out to how is that for those of you that might be using more privatized space, you know, a space that's owned by a corporate entity as opposed to a municipal entity. And if you've been working with both, if you're seeing a difference or a parallel to the two. Just kind of curious how that has affected anybody. And I apologize if I don't pronounce your name right. Anya?
Anya, like Tanya with a T.
Gotcha. I won't make that mistake again.
Yeah. You were talking about how have things changed to book a venue, and actually, I heard an interesting story from one of our clients actually in the UK, and what they started doing in terms of getting their venue booked was a pay what you can sort of scenario for all of their spaces. So they're actually using a ticketing kind of idea that had come out during COVID, which is pay what you can, or has been around for a while, and they've actually used it in terms of booking their venue. So for feasibility for, I think maybe, people who are struggling like they were financially as well, because they had a bit of a deficit. But I think also it was a great idea that they're doing, because they're doing a huge marketing campaign around it. And I think they're also attracting new people to their venue because they built it a couple years ago. They had just finished their building and then COVID hit. So it's just one of the interesting stories that have kind of emerged out of our client base that I don't really think I've seen anyone else doing, because I mean, it is maybe a bit risky, but I think it's also a very bold kind of initiative that they're doing to really get people into their spaces.
That's really interesting. It's nice to see that there's an option like that somewhere. I know it's been very streamlined, cookie cutter almost for years. And I guess with this time that we've all had to sit back, reassess, and revise our methods, even that's happening with venues like that. That's really, I want to hear more about that maybe later. We can have a side discussion. I can bring that up here. Anybody else? Hello? And I'm
I just have another interesting observation as well. I think with COVID too, in our case, a lot of the bigger events have kind of stood down, and it's given an opportunity for some of the smaller events that wouldn't necessarily otherwise get access because bookings are made in advance and don't have a chance to step up. So there's kind of a changing of the guard almost, where a lot of some of the communities and some of the charities are having a chance to step up and fill the gap because they are smaller. They have some mobility and being able to plan some of their events. That's the case at the conference center here, at the convention center here in London. So some dates that typically wouldn't be available are. So it's one of the positive things, I guess, that's kind of unfolding for our venues.
Interesting. We were doing great time. This time is flying by. I just realized 45 minutes went crazy. I'm just taking a look, Linda. We are renting a public park from a town. Frustrating part, no one seems to have any real guidelines. Everyone is going on the basis. The Board of Health said it is okay, then it is all good. And that can be very difficult in the long run. I know here are the Porcupine Health Unit. We have a very, I'm not going to use the word militant, but she's a very formidable force in working with venues, even outside venues for events over the last few years, because there's been a few little things that have happened. And I find sometimes the communication isn't flowing through to the venue owner, whether it's the municipality or a private corporate entity. And when as an organizer and you're looking for guidance so that you're ensuring you're hosting a safe event, it's kind of a challenge to get the exact what do you want us to do in order so that we can proceed, and a lot of going back and forth and circling the water drain, so to speak, to find that particular bit of information. And when you bring into the government side of things, where that, also at the beginning, there was a bit of a mixed messaging happening. That was a huge frustration. It was invoking those health and safety plans for those venues can, I'm sure they have fluctuated, changed, morphed, and flip-flopped all over the place. And, outside venues, maybe not so much, but definitely an inside venue. Well, even our own event, the conference this year, we were hoping for that full-time in-person experience, and things came down the pipe. Well, we better go to the virtual, and we did. And what was it? Just a day or so before, all of a sudden restrictions were lessened. So, it's so. I'm not going to say discouraging, but challenging to get your premise forward. Definitely. And it's nice to have groups like this where we can discuss it and share ideas, and how we've found that referencing friends, the pivot to make your event a success in some format. Definitely. Let's see, what do you think, Debbie? What more?
Kyle has a comment.
A little bit of time.
Kyle has a comment.
Oh, sorry. There you are, Kyle. Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say, just on that topic, one conversation that I'm having with clients is that they are looking to change their footprint after many years of doing the same thing, just to simply allow for more space, so that, depending on what comes in, they do want to have more of a footprint to allow more spacing to happen. So in conversations with me, they're talking more about roaming entertainment, ways of filling that space, and just making everything feel cohesive.
And what about, well, we talked a little bit about volunteers. Did you mention that? There's some comments in here about volunteers. Yeah, Jean. You're muted. There you go.
Okay, about our festival. The festival is run by Akaba Cultural Exchange. It's a non-profit cultural organization. So what we do about volunteer, we have activity orientation, because we have different committees. So we train in each committee. We put a leader where we train him how to work with the group of volunteers for a sport. That's what we do. And we plan before the festival to have 2 sections of training. Session of training for each leader, and he's gonna have a meeting with each group of volunteers that we work with him. That's what we do. So about the health situation, the president and the vice president of our organization will work in the medical field. So we are in charge of everything relate to the health situation. Whatever someone is sick, the volunteer is sick, or even one of the audience, someone is sick, or even to implement the health measure regarding our festival, if the city asks for that, also they are in charge of that. That's what we plan to do.
Are you having?
Go ahead.
Do you find that you're having a challenge getting volunteers?
Yeah, volunteer. We didn't get one. We try to work with Arton volunteer. We have a meeting with them, with the director of Arton volunteer, this Friday coming up, where we're going to talk about this special issues. So we will see how we're going to go. But last year it was not a problem. We got in total 15 volunteers. But this year our festival is 2 days, and we need like around 40 volunteers. So that's why we're going to discuss with the director of Arton volunteer next Friday. But we have to train all leaders of each committee, volunteer, food volunteer, the leader, even the entertainment, each level of a volunteer group, we have a leader. And so we train them to know exactly how to work with volunteers, how to make the volunteers to work. That's what we do. Yeah.
Thanks, Sean. Thank you. And Brian.
I just wanted to confirm that, yes, the volunteer situation is a concern. That was one of the biggest barriers in this year's Around the Bay Road race in Hamilton, was the lack of the massive group of volunteers that would be available to actually assist in the deployment of that event. And I don't know if it's just a everyday fear now that even though we're at this phase, and now we've actually experienced supposedly again another wave, that people are that concerned about exposure. But I mean, every day you're hearing somebody in the news, locally, entertainment, otherwise. I mean, even the commissioner of the CFL brought down by COVID and had to cancel a string of events, right? So I don't know if it's a mindset, but definitely there seems to be a bit of a barrier in trying to team up, with additional volunteers. You're muted, Debbie.
Any suggestions from the floor? Anybody else experiencing that? Marnie, any comments?
Oh, Colleen and Anya both have some comments, so I will. Colleen, I saw your name first.
I was just going to say, because we're just rolling out our events, I'm not sure how it's all going to play out, but what we've started leaning to is reach out to your service clubs. Oftentimes they bring volunteers. I reached out to our Kiwanis Club for Canada Day because our committee is actually down by a few members, and they've come on board and offered 10 or 12 of their committee members for the day, just wherever we could use them. So fantastic relationships to be had there. Also, sometimes I reach out to the high schools knowing that they need community hours. Obviously, it depends on what you require from your volunteers and what skill level, maturity level, whatever. But those are a couple places that I go looking for volunteers. And we're really fortunate in Quinte West to have Volunteer and Information Quinte, which is an organization that holds a database of not only businesses and companies looking for volunteers, but also volunteers' information themselves, and it matches them. You can look up volunteer opportunities using various criterias and drop-down menus and stuff. So we've also secured a lot of really great volunteers from that organization because they do a lot of the pre-screening and sort of matching and stuff, and will send us volunteers that sort of suit the position that we're looking for. But I have noticed that there's less coming from VIQ right now. And that's why I've reached out to our service clubs. And we were fortunate, as I said, to get one of our service clubs to come on. But those are resources. They're always an option anyway, just to put it out there if someone hasn't made use of those connections yet.
My previous experience to the festivals and events, I was in the not-for-profit sector throughout the 2000s. And we noticed even then that there is a big gap in volunteerism now, because the volunteers who have been there for years, mostly retirees, were now retiring from volunteering. And, some were able to grandfather the volunteer role to their children, but these children are now the Gen Xers to the elder millennials who are holding down 1 and 2 jobs and raising a family, and they don't have that extra time to give to an event. So when the programs for the high schools came on, that was fantastic. And I saw that Linda had made a comment in the chat about working with high school students and the boards changing the rules now, where before it had to be with a a not-for-profit organization or a senior citizens complex or something like that. Now they can get it through other means, so it's a little bit hard. And the 40 and done doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to continue volunteering past their 40 hours. So you're always retraining those volunteers, finding somebody to fit those roles. I've looked at it in a couple of different ways as what other organizations could I work with. Very successfully here in our community, we have the Timmins Multicultural Center, which facilitates new Canadians in integrating into the community and becoming part of the community. And it's been a fantastic resource. The other thing is looking at what our volunteer model is going to be looking like and how are we going to change those past traditional roles to make it more conducive to the human resource accessibility that we have, because getting people out to volunteer now, because that generation that has retired from volunteering is not accessible to us anymore, and the ones that would normally step in, their roles in society have changed compared to those that have just retired out of volunteering. So it's hard. It's a juggle. It's conversations. And one of the things that I did learn through my not-for-profit experience was the reason I didn't volunteer is because I wasn't asked. And that was the biggest shocker to me because I thought, you're right. How many people do I know? And I've never asked them to come and volunteer. My family's been voluntold. They many times. We've all done that. But, just your own network. I never thought to ask. So I've definitely changed my stance on that. But I just, a couple of points that, Linda had brought through, I thought I would kind of touch on. Anybody else along that line? Anya,
Can I just make a comment first?
Okay.
We are past our hour, our 12 o'clock. We'll stay on and answer these questions. If you have to go, we understand. But I just want to let you know that we recognize we're over time. So thanks, Ashlyn. So Anya, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I recently went to a really good virtual volunteer fair. So Marnie, you were just saying about being invited. So everyone was invited to it, but I thought the format was really good and it was easier to do in virtual. It was just an hour. And I was the head of a committee. So the beginning was basically the executive director talking about the association. The board was inviting people to volunteer and how important it was to the organization. So really anyone that was invited already had a connection with the CEO and the board. So I think it was more face-to-face and personal. And because they also kind of knew these people, I think by the end of the fair, I think everyone had volunteered for something. So they could go into the different groups, talk to the different committees, ask questions about, how much time will it take, or, what are your goals for each committee? And then by the end, it was just a really great format, because originally it had just been done once a year and to try and get everyone in person. But I think this is something that will be repeated. And I thought it was really great. It was, I think, one of the best fairs I've ever been to.
Thanks, Anya. Tina.
I haven't had the same issue with volunteers. In fact, we've because we didn't have the demand in events for the volunteers, we actually had a lot that weren't engaged into things that are like messaging me constantly. Is there anything? Is there anything? But what we did do in that might help some others out is we used Facebook demographic marketing to go after volunteers for volunteer recruitment. I couldn't even keep up with the number of people that were coming in through the parks using that Facebook marketing for our area. So people are looking to get into all of this, involved. The other thing is having an ambassador or a champion, at the high school. They helped me bring in tons of volunteers for some other organizations that I do volunteer work for. They literally take my application into the class, hand it out to the kids, have them fill it out and bring it back.
Thanks, Tina. Kyle.
I mentioned it briefly in the chat, but just to reiterate, is things that have worked in the past is working with either partnering with a charity, because they may already have a volunteer bank that are, if you're able to give the charity visibility, then you may be able to simply take that, access their volunteer base, or a trades union, especially if they're already a sponsor, or if they're looking to have visibility at the site, they may be willing and able to access a great group of volunteers as well.
Thank you. Thanks. Those are great suggestions, guys. Thanks so much. Linda asked, how do you How do you use the Facebook marketing, Linda?
So what we did was, it's just like how you would advertise your event, only we made an advertisement that said volunteer recruitment, and targeted the age groups that are most likely to volunteer. And we had tons of people respond to those emails, or sorry, advertisements. And you could put, like, it can be a very low amount, like $20 in a Facebook targeted marketing ad goes a long way.
Oh, okay. We've never actually done paid ones. That's what, okay.
Yes, it was definitely a paid marketing ad that had went out, but it was very helpful.
At this point, we may have to, because I know we didn't qualify for any grants at all, which is so frustrating, because this is my little soapbox that, you know, strip clubs and strip joints and bathhouses got grants and we didn't get nothing. So this is my little thing, but I'll get on my soapbox now. But I said, we're still going to go ahead with this and make it work. I don't know how, but yeah, because a number of our sponsors have actually gone under for COVID. So yeah, we're just trying to make the best we can. And that's what I basically just started reaching out to all my friends. It's like, can you help me? And I've actually got people donating $20, $30 to me to say, we want this festival to happen. I said, then we need support.
Yeah. I have one more thing that also helps us with volunteer recruitment. Through Niagara Parks, we're a Attractions Ontario recipient. So what that, we go into the reciprocal program. So that means we're providing a certain percentage, I think it's 10% off, I think is what it is, or it's a free pass, or however it is, you offer something on that, then any one of your volunteers or staff can have that for any of the attractions, events that are, attractions that take place in Ontario. We had this when I was at the Winter Festival of Lights as well. And when I was at the Winter Festival of Lights, I offered a small percentage that was the minimum requirement, since we were a free event, off our merchandise, and that got us in, and all of our volunteers then had the benefit of going to the aquarium in Toronto for free with 4 friends, having 50% off, all these different things to try to get them, give them an incentive to come and volunteer for our organization. But I really did find this year a lot of people were just wanting to get back into doing things.
Well, thank you, Tina. That's a great idea. I know we've used Facebook marketing for our events as well, more to advertise the event. Never thought of doing it to target volunteers. So yeah, I'm bringing that to a couple of boards I'm sitting on. I think that's a great idea. You know, I like a targeted campaign no matter what I'm doing. So this, I think, would be fantastic. And it can be so creative as well, you know, and I think that's great. Attraction Ontario's reciprocal program. Thank you. Definitely looking that up. So we are 8 minutes past our time. I could talk all day. Events is my thing. I'd like to thank everyone that has participated today. Even if you've just sat and taken the information in, that is great. You know, because I've always found anytime that I've participated in one of the sessions with FEO, I've always come away with at least one thing that I'm going to try and implement going further. If this starts your mind thinking about questions that you might potentially have, bring them back to the next one next month, or feel free to reach out to us here if there's something that you'd like an answer on a little bit sooner. You know, we're all a great bunch. We like to talk, as found out today. It's our passion, right? And I'm assuming that it's partly yours as well, because you're here. We had a really good turnout, and you know, Debbie and I thank you very much for your time and for sticking around as long as you've had, and your patience as we've gone through this, learning to flex our Zoom muscles in this new format of having these discussions that we used to have at FEO conference in those side rooms, right? So I'm hoping we get to see you all next month. The notes will be coming out to you soon to register for the next one. The session has been recorded, so members of FEO will be able to access it. If you're not a member of FEO, let's have that talk and get you on. And if there was something that you weren't clear on in the video, just let us know and we'll go back to it and bring you the answers forward. So that being said, I won't take up more of your lunch hour. Thank you very much, and we will see you next month. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.